Hey, dude, how you
Hey,
doing today?
hey, what's happening, man? How are you?
Another day in paradise. I can't complain. How are you?
I'm feeling good, man. I appreciate you putting on the get up today for the interviews. Looking good.
It worked better than the latex mask. You couldn't hear shit out of that thing.
Seriously. So, would you say that you guys try to tailor sort of the outfits to your senses to a degree, or has there been many times where you have to compromise for the aesthetic?
Ultimately, with the masks, it's pretty hard to breathe and see and hear. We do our best to get them, custom made to our own heads as possible. So when our, sculptors are doing it, they do it to our actual head cast. So at least the eye holes and ear holes line up. But again, man, once you've got it on, your peripheral vision isn't always there, and the way you hear inside there, sometimes the latex kind of makes things sound strange. But you get used to it after a while, and I will say it's definitely hot.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I mean, does it feel weird? Maybe this is a strange question, but I mean, in terms of the actual performance element from your personal standpoint, does it feel different in the studio when you're doing music, just you without the costume? Does the costume give you a certain feeling in relation to the music, or is it just a transferable thing where you feel the same either way?
I mean, the energy is definitely there. I think the mask is almost like the last step in the final hype before, the performance. And like when you're crafting the song, so to speak, and they get to a point to where they're strong or they've got the energy, and then you're like, oh man, this might make a really good live song. Then that kind of comes into play. As far as where the next step is and how to kind of bring that to life. And that's kind of where in each album cycle where we try to change up the masks a little bit and make them, evolve, so to speak. They don't the character doesn't change completely. Sometimes it does if it's a new character, but they just kind of morph in comparison to like say how Mortal Kombat, grows every time they put a new one out. It's slightly different. The characters, look a little more detailed or a little more battle damaged or whatever. So we kind of keep that mentality, as we work on the mask and bring that to the stage as we're crafting. But tracking it and recording it, we're not necessarily thinking, how it's going to play out live. So sometimes some of the songs are like, man, that song's really long. I can't breathe.
Right. What percentage of your budget would you say is put towards the costumes and just maintaining the look? Is that a big chunk of the budget, or is it something that sort of you've fine-tuned and it doesn't take as much effort or resources as one might think?
It's funny because usually budgets go super quick and it's over with. And sometimes we overthink it to where it's like sometimes the wardrobe doesn't necessarily need to be the forefront, and we'll go overboard and then we'll put it together and say, I don't even like it. So you live and learn a little bit, but again, it's art all the way through and through. So the makeup and the wardrobe and the masks, that a lot of that is experimenting too, and we don't necessarily know what we want. We know we want to make it slightly different and have it evolve, kind of like like we do with the mask, like I said. So yeah, we don't necessarily always know, but as far as budgets go on wardrobe for like say a video or something, it's a good chunk of it, no problem.
Yeah, I can definitely imagine. And I mean, speaking of this latest album cycle, obviously so much going on with the group right now. And I would say a very exciting time. You have the return of, Dave Gravy Felton coming back in the group. Obviously, you guys have the presence of Jackie on this record as well. Maybe if you could speak on sort of the direction of the band during this cycle and really how it's felt sort of internally within the group.
I obviously it felt really good to finally get back to work and recording in the studio. And a lot of this album and the sounds and the attitudes and the emotion in it was basically, a conglomeration of during and post COVID.
Okay.
So there's some kind of, gloomy, depressing stuff. And then, where the world starts to turn back on, like when we first started getting together and recording, a lot of that stuff was a lot of high energy, just naturally came out of us because we were just excited to be able to sit in a room together in close quarters and just talk and, watch movies or just stupid shit on YouTube and just catch up. So there was a lot of fun in these recordings, and I think we captured it and it plays well. And then, other times there was in some of the recording sessions there was kind of post, COVID leftovers and stories to tell, like, and they were a little more doomy and a little more serious. So, this album is very much a conglomeration of, all that time and emotion spent during and post COVID. And I think it's something that everyone can relate to because, we all went through it together.
No, exactly. I mean, obviously with the return of Gravy, like we mentioned, I mean, what's it like for you when a band member is coming back into the fold? Sort of what's the dynamic like, and sort of what is that adjustment period? Does it take a long time, or is it like we just pick up where we left off?
Yeah, it's always like that. We just pick up right where we left off. Like I mentioned before, we first couple of sessions, we just got together and laughed and talked and ate and watched dumb movies and YouTube stuff and just kind of caught up more so than worried about, oh, we got to make the heaviest tune ever. And it's funny you say that because with Gravy, I think like the third time we got together, we actually started recording, and he and I just went in with he playing guitar and drums only, and we didn't have anything planned. We didn't talk about nothing. We just said, "All right, press record and just play for an hour." And then when we sat down and listened to it, there was a section or two in what we had done that turned into the first song on the new album, Eye to Eye. So the minute we sat down, we had something, and we knew it. So it was really, really amazing to get back to recording kind of how we used to, and even better, with technology and just having a little bit of time off, man. It definitely cleared everyone's head.
So in terms of having, people coming back, you're saying that you guys just pick up where you left off. How about the addition of new members throughout the years? Because obviously there's been so many members, throughout the group. I mean, I'm curious, does that make it challenging in any way to create, to sort of keep track of things? Or again, is it a situation where you're so used to it that you sort of just roll with the punches? Because I would imagine that even, dealing with the amount of personalities within the group can sometimes present challenges, at least from the outside perspective.
Yeah, when it comes to the whole creative process, new or old or reoccurring uh members or players, it's always pretty easy on the creative process. It's very collaborative, and we kind of just go with our first instincts most of the time and just let things naturally go, or just evolve where they need to. um One thing I will say about having new guys is, you don't know where it's going to go sometimes, and that takes you out of your comfort zone, and that leads you to more possibilities. So I don't look at it as a negative thing ever. I kind of like to not know what is truly in the future, and I don't know 100% what I'm going to get. So I think that that's a little more intriguing to me.
There seems to be sort of the concept that since you're the senior member in the group, that maintain the majority of creative control, and that basically the final say comes down to you. And that's obviously an outside perspective from people who aren't within the inner circle. Is there any truth to that perspective, or is it a situation where it's a very collaborative effort, even though you are the person with seniority?
Yeah, it is very collaborative. But it always comes down to someone making the final call. Someone has to decide when the deadline is, or what is too loud, or, because when you get too many cooks, let's face it, it just doesn't work.
The one thing about your fans is there's such longevity for the people who are within your base. There's fans who I see online, they talk about being with you guys for the full 30 years, and up until this point. Is that something that sort of stands out to you, or how do you feel about the fact that you guys have retained such a loyal fan base since day one?
It's incredible, actually. And we're very blessed to have such loyal fans like that, and just to know that we reach people through our art and our music. I'll tell you, it's really cool. It wasn't that long ago I ran into someone that had been coming around since they were in their early 20s, and here they are in their mid 30s, and they're bringing their 5-year-old son to a Mushroomhead show. So it's crazy how generational it actually has become.
I mean, what's the main thing that fans say to you when they come up to you? Is there a specific thing that they seem to mention, or is it sort of very different on a case by case basis?
It's very different, totally by case to case. I don't really get recognized that often. The singers get recognized much more than I do, but yeah, it's kind of rare for me.
So how often would you say you're recognized? Because that was going to be my next question without the mask. Would you say once a month or even less than that?
It's less than that. I mean, depending on where we're at, like if we're at a metal show or something, some people will obviously know me that I either worked with or someone at the venue. Every now and again, it'll be a fan, and then if someone asks me for a selfie, then the camera goes off. Out comes the phone, and then people start looking, and people start talking, and then there's 5 people that want a selfie, and then I have to leave. I mean, I'll take the selfie and stuff, but at that point, the cat's out of the bag and shit. I gotta go.
How about speaking on obviously the group's first female vocalist, Jackie Laponza, getting incredible reviews from the fans, reading the comments and just sort of the critical reception to what you guys have been putting out. What's that dynamic been like with Jackie, and how is she sort of finding her footing within the group?
It's been excellent, man. She is the perfect complementary and contrasting voice to a lot of these songs that we've needed, and she really shines on this album. We often say some of her stuff is like hauntingly beautiful because she just has an approach to the way she does things where it's multi-layered, and she doesn't always sit in the forefront. She will be tucked underneath, and just her abilities from her range. And again, her as a person, she's just a pleasure to work with, a lot of fun, and she loves performing live. uh she gets out, and walks on the crowd, and I mean, she really gets involved. It's awesome to see someone with such passion join the crew.
Yeah, and I mean that's something that a lot of people have talked about. That seems to be, the crowd walks and elements like that seem to make a huge impression. I mean, it almost feels like the shows might not be the same without that level of crowd interaction that you guys have, because you guys are always out in the crowd.
Yeah, I think it's important for both the band and the audience to interact um, as much as possible. That's what the live element is for. And kind of looking back at the '90s, it was no different back then. The shows were slammed, people were stage diving, everyone looked out for each other. If you fell down in the pit, they made sure to pick you up. Not that it's any different now, but like I said, the energy, was there. The only difference now is there were no cell phones.
Right. Okay. See, I was going to ask, what is the biggest difference today compared to, the 90s? Would you say the phones is probably number one, or are there other elements?
No, that to me is the big one, because everyone lived in the moment because there was no way to share with everyone. They went home and actually went Dear Diary style, and kept it for themselves and told everyone, hey, you have to come see this to believe it, not, check your phone and see if you're interested. It was, you have to see this to believe it. And that's, I think that kind of got lost. Not to mention, getting lost in a performance, just watching taking it all in, from the lighting to you know to the sound to the actual movements of the characters on stage, like, looking at it as the whole spectrum of entertainment without your phone in your hand or without being interrupted by your phone for 3 songs. I don't think many people do that anymore.
No, I don't think they do. I mean, what are your thoughts on concerts where they make people put their phones away? For example, I've been to shows recently where they give you an envelope, you can't take your phone out of it. Is that something you would ever consider, or do you feel like it's sort of maybe encroaches on a bit of freedom there?
So we actually did that at a show. We had a show to celebrate our album, Super Buick, and it was a limited number of tickets, and there was like a dress code. Everyone had to, a suit and tie at the very least. It was one of those type of events. And then we just asked everyone to put their phones away, and please do not take pictures. Just enjoy the show, please. And man, it was amazing how many people just went with it. And then there weren't phones out. There's not even a lot of pictures online of that event because people were they really wanted to experience that. Now, doing that every time or just telling people what to do in general isn't cool. I don't think, people want to do what they want to do. They have a right to get on their phone if they want. Uh, and again, if you can, even at a full show, if you can manage to put it down for 3 songs and just enjoy yourself, I highly recommend it.
No, for sure. It's such an interesting aspect. And then, we also see a lot of tickets potentially being sold through these videos. So I can imagine it's a double-edged sword as well when, even the band is maintaining their own social media presence. It must be hard to navigate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it benefits as far as the whole, getting the word out there. But I mean, a lot of this stuff is built to sell stuff. Let's face it. At the end of the day, these phones are just a gateway to consumerism and telling yourself you need more than you have.
That's very true. Just to wrap up, obviously you guys have the 31st annual Halloween show, which is going to be coming up. Obviously something that's huge for the fans. I'd be curious if you could set the scene sort of to what those shows look like. I know we can maybe picture it to a degree, but what is that like and how has that evolved since 31 years ago?
It's like Christmas comes to town for us once a year, and it's the Halloween show. It really is that. You see a lot of old school fans, just that time of year just sits right with the whole Mushroomhead camp, and it kind of always has. So it's very special to us for doing that. But one of the biggest things that I every year I think the crowd is louder than the PA system. They
Wow.
they sing every word, so it's just amazing for me to hear. And I mean, when you hear it ringing through a mask, you're like, "Holy shit! Listen to that!" Yeah, the people that come to the Halloween show, man, they're really into it. They understand the band. They understand that time of year. They're out to have a good time. And some of the costumes, man, everyone gets dressed up, and it's a very creative audience.
Would you say that most people dress like you guys at the show, or do they dress like just sort of other characters for Halloween?
We've seen quite a mix of it. I mean, all the, sometimes you'll see people that look better than you do, that they're dressed as Skinny or they're dressed as J-Man, and you have to do a double take and say, was that the real one? Pretty cool.